Hi, guys. Welcome to TOKY Office Hours. This is our 1 year anniversary of doing this. We started this in November of 2024, and it's been a lot of fun doing this every month. We're going to continue doing it. Last month, we pivoted a little bit in the format, turning this a bit more into a conversation as opposed to a presentation. And we're going to continue that this month with Mike Sabatino, who I'll introduce to you in just a moment. But I would encourage everyone to put questions in the chat or just raise your hand and we will call on you. Again, this is a conversation, so no need to wait until the end. Just jump in with those questions at any point. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to my friend and our co-host or our guest, Mike Sabatino. Mike is with Interactive Outfitters after a long career that I'm going to let him talk about. And today he's really focused on AI and educating organizations in best practices and how to use the tools that are out there, and more importantly, how to think about integrating AI into your organization. Mike's background is not specifically AEC, so he's going to be bringing a broader lens to this. In some future editions, we're going to bring some folks on who are developing tools that are specific to the AEC industry, like proposal development tools like Shred and Joist. So, Mike, welcome to TOKY Office Hours. It's great to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Jerry. So like you guys, maybe a little bit older, maybe a lot older than a lot of you guys. I came out of school and bought a brand new computer and learned it first before doing my traditional graphic design because I knew that's probably where things were going to head. So coming out of school, I was helping to teach my companies that I worked at, two smaller boutiques in the beginning, how to use the computer to design on. So that dates me a little bit. That's why you see all the gray here. After that, I actually got on at Fleischman Hillard and spent almost 23 years there. But after my first year, myself and another gentleman started the digital practice there. So that evolved and grew and turned into it was a disruptor, obviously, for everybody in the industry. But that was my first foray into kind of going through how technology impacts what we do as agencies, and very mind blowing at the time. And I thought, oh man, this is crazy. But we navigated it. We learned from it. I took that same skill set, having gone after I left Fleischman after 23 years. I had my own tech agency for another 5 years, provided support to other agencies, but also built our own software. I wasn't a developer, just putting that out there, more on the creative and sales front. So, but then ended up going back to Fleischman for a stint through COVID. That was I think for me to manage a creative team of 50 people during COVID, that was not fun, to say the least, but learned from that again, and then got out and worked for a smaller agency again. I just like smaller agencies, wearing multiple hats. There, I helped onboard our agency to AI when it was first coming out, learning what can it do, what can it not do, how do we use it? And again, the lessons learned from the digital front lent itself to what I'm doing now, which is helping other agencies, other entities and organizations embrace and understand how to use AI. And I think a lot of that has been very eye-opening. I'm having more fun now, I think, than I ever have, just seeing where people are at, and the fear factor, I think, is there, which is healthy. You should be fearful of it, but not from it's going to take my job per se, more from the unknown, and how do you start to learn more about the knowns so that you can apply it to what you do. Yeah. So it's It's been a wild ride. I studied business before I studied design, so I've got that weird. I need to understand what I'm doing, all the stuff for. So at the root of everything that I do, really understanding why we're doing what we're doing is really critical. I think, especially for AI, it comes in more so there than anywhere else, because at the end of the day, why would we use AI? Um, that's what we all have to answer that question. Why are we using it? Is it a time savings efficiency? Is it helping us do something else? Is it helping open new doors and changing our business model? And maybe we're looking at it differently in terms of what we're going to be doing in the future. So I think all of those things create a lot of questions, but a lot of opportunity as well.
Awesome. So, Mike, as we start the conversation, I'm wondering, this is such a fast moving thing. I mean, just this week, Google announced Gemini 3, which
Mhm.
blasts past the benchmarks and things that were established, what, like last week by ChatGPT 5.
Right.
So, I mean, it feels at times like we're on a massive roller coaster. Um, and that can be a bit unsettling. I'm curious if you can maybe talk about two things. One is, how do you advise clients to approach the pace of change, so that it doesn't become whiplash? And then second, what's the number one question that you're getting these days, as it relates to, how do I utilize AI in my organization, or maybe how do I get started with it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think on the first one, you already said it. What is the best this week is not going to be the best next week. It's just accept that it's going to be evolving and changing faster than anything we've ever seen. Um, so it's less about. Um, I think the bigger question that people ask, the main question they ask is, where do we begin? Is the number one, but then followed up quickly by what tool should we be using?
Mm,
And
mhm.
it all comes down to whatever their needs are. If you need a core platform, a core LLM to start with, kind of depends on what your team already, what are they already using and tinkering and playing with? Because generally, when I get into an organization, their employees are already doing things with it. It's not formalized, it's not structured, there's no governance over it, typically. So from that regard, it's just understanding, what are they using now? What are they not using? And I think when we talk AI, I think a lot of people confuse AI that's built into the Adobe suite with the LLMs, with, Copilot and everything else. It's all the above, but I think answering the question, what type of AI are you talking about? So that's where generally I think it's more based on the LLMs, the platforms, a core base platform to start from is where they typically navigate to.
Yeah.
Um, and go ahead.
Well, I think talking about LLMs, so first of all, let's just make sure that we define terms. So an LLM is a large language model, and I think we would think of that as being ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Llama from Meta. Those are the sort of the premier LLMs. I think by last count that I saw, there's something like 2 million LLMs that have been developed, various versions and what have you. So it's a rapidly expanding space, but those are the common ones, and the idea being a large language model is a corpus of information. I think ChatGPT has literally trillions of tokens of information, which is the equivalent of 2 or 300 million books worth of information in it. But at the end of the day, can you talk about how does a large language model like ChatGPT actually respond? What is it doing under the hood?
Yeah, I think to that regard, the hype that I think people were expecting was, it's an oracle. It can answer any question you want accurately and specifically to give you exactly what you need. I think the reality is, yes, it has all that information, but look at it more so like an employee that has the greatest potential you've ever seen. It's up to you as a manager of that employee to give it the guidance, the feedback, the data it needs, uh, to set the expectations for what you actually need from it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue I see with all of this is that people will just pop open ChatGPT and start typing, and it's like, well, you're not giving it any guidance or parameters. You're just asking questions of it. That's where the hallucinations come in,
Mm.
because there is so much information out there. If it doesn't have the context to guide it through what you're actually trying to, what your end goal is, that's where I see the biggest mistakes coming out of it.
Yeah.
Is having that formal structure of some kind to give it, and context to give it, and good examples of what you consider good to be, are like some of the key components that help make it more successful.
Yeah. So, do you have a framework for interacting with an LLM that you find to be particularly valuable or useful?
Yeah, and just just so you know, I think there are. I follow the Risen framework,
Okay.
more than anything. It's for depending upon which LLM you're using, it's probably the best general framework. What I will say is that, like on ChatGPT, they now have a prompting tool they've built that helps optimize your prompts specific to which model you're using.
Hmm.
So that also is tremendously helpful within there. But Risen for me is probably the core one that I have started using more and more and more, and teach people to use, because that's generally, I'll use that as one when I'm onboarding an organization. I'll have the employees go through and do, step by step, adding each step to it so they can see the difference that it brings back by following each of those steps. I think that is probably the most, um, impactful when people realize that, I hear it all the time. I haven't been prompting properly.
Hmm. Yeah. Can you kind of walk us through at a high level? What is the Risen framework,
Sure.
and what does each step of it or each component of it do?
Yep. Yeah. The first one is role.
Okay.
So defining the role. You're a business analyst, or even better, you're a top 0.1% business analyst. So just setting the expectation for what that mindset is that you're expecting it to act like.
Hmm.
The second step are the instructions, the I. Um, so what instructions do you want to give it in terms of how it should walk through, the analysis of what you want it to do? Or if there are specific steps that you needed to analyze something first and then come back with. Um, the steps are followed by that in terms of very specific steps. If you expect, um, you know, go do market research, come back, whittle it down to the core concepts of what I need, and then summarize it into, a brief for me.
Hmm.
That's one example. And then I kind of already said the brief, but giving it an end goal, that's the E, the end goal,
Okay.
uh, what the end goal needs to be. That way it knows for sure what it's trying to achieve at the very end of all of this. Then lastly is narrowing. Does there need to be any narrowing, specific to, um, what you're expecting? So a lot of times it can be pretty broad with what it brings back, even though that was the expectation. And if you need to narrow it down, say it's specific to an audience or specific to, another file type that you want or file types that you want, you can give it that information there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Another framework for prompting that I've been using, Jeff Woods I think popularized, called Crit. So it's very similar. He says context, role, interview, and task. And the similarities are, giving it a lot. You have to give it the background. You have to give it the context. It doesn't know about your particular situation or your particular needs. So the more information, and you can't I don't think you can give it too much information about your specific situation. Um, so that's the context. And then the role is exactly what you just described. And potentially could even be multiple roles. So, I want you to think about this both as a um, senior, experienced AEC marketer who's worked both in large and small firms, as well as looking at this as a principal within an architecture firm, for example. So you can have multiple roles if that's relevant to the output. I think the one step that I really love that he adds is the I, which is interview. So in this step, or this very simple prompt that you're adding into this is, I want you to interview me. I want you to ask me up to 3 questions, one at a time, to give you greater clarity in being able to accomplish the task I'm going to give you. And then task, which is your end goal and a bit of the narrowing. So it's very similar. I think the key takeaways is giving it a role. Otherwise, it's just like a librarian
Right.
going out and finding information, giving it context, because otherwise it is. I love what you said about thinking about an LLM like an employee. We would never go to an employee and say, "I want you to do X," and that's the entire thing, right? First of all, you would hire the right person, so you're going to hire somebody who has the skill set. That's role. We're talking to an LLM that sort of has an infinite set of skill sets, so you have to tell it which one it's going to deploy. But you wouldn't tell the employee to go and develop a strategic plan, for example, for your firm without ever telling it anything about it.
Yeah.
So that's that context. And then I think there's some magic in the interview because it will, find questions. It'll ask you questions that you have not even thought about that
Yep.
will really create something interesting. Um, so I want to pause for just 1 second because I've got lots of questions and conversation to continue with. But is anyone on the call have anything about this? I see Alex, you have your hand up. So why don't you jump in?
Yeah, Mike, I just had a situation yesterday with 2 AI platforms, so this is a perfectly relevant conversation. I've spent the majority of my time with AI in ChatGPT, and so have built a comfort with it. I have several projects running in it, and so it has learned a lot from me as well. And so I was in the middle of working through a particular element of a project, and I could not avoid the hype and excitement around Gemini 3. So I thought, well, I'll give this a try. And so I went in and essentially copy and pasted the key parts of the Chat GPT element that I was working with into Gemini 3 and was immediately dissatisfied with what it spat back. Now, of course, it's exactly what you talked about. I'm missing all that context, all that input, all of that. So of course it gave me an unsatisfactory
Right.
result for what I was looking for. But what I'm struggling with and trying to figure out is how do you balance the use of different platforms across the board? I am essentially right now platform agnostic in that I don't really care which platform to use, but I have the most time invested in ChatGPT, and it's learned a lot from me, and vice versa. So when you think about how to balance the use across the board, how do I overcome sort of the what I would call like a hard switching cost in terms of just general input and time, even if I'm very interested and excited to try something else.
I think to that point, Alex, there are you'll learn that there are differences between the LLMs that are a little more generalized, meaning for me, Gemini, Perplexity, those are much better from a research point of view.
Mm,
So it depends on what the task that you're trying to do with it. Okay.
yeah.
For me, the research side, chat's pretty good. It just does not give me as many citations as I want.
Okay.
I'll go into Perplexity or I'll go into Gemini where I can get much greater citations
Yeah.
so that I can validate and check against everything versus chat, which is good. They just give you a handful.
Mhm.
So it comes down to, for me, what are you expecting it to do?
Yeah.
And just knowing, again, we're dealing with something that is the most agile thing in this world that I know of. AI is so agile and changing hourly, if you will. Um, what works or didn't work today may work tomorrow. You just never know. So I think, to that point, you already mentioned you've got a comfort level of, and you know ChatGPT inside and out for most of what you do. You may discover other things along the way that, like what I was mentioning for research or other purposes, that another platform is actually better for. But it takes time. You have to go explore that for yourself. I don't think you can rely on anyone to tell you exactly what each platform will do for you and what you need. I think it depends on, you have to just give yourself permission to go explore those and test those for yourself to, again, build that comfort level. Because now you're hitting on something that is critical, that if the tools that are out there, you don't either have a comfort with it or understand how to make it work within your workflow, it's never going to work anyway. I
Yeah.
think that's the hardest thing that I see is, um, when you create tools with AI, it generally is something specific for your need, which from an ROI standpoint means you're probably going to get a decent ROI because it's so specific for what you need. The challenge is, um, picking the platform and making sure that whatever you use works with your workflow and people are comfortable with it. Because if not, they're never going to adopt it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super helpful because as you're saying that, I'm thinking of outside of anything having to do with AI, I have my own set of tools that I use for different steps of projects in general. And so I like that framing in the way of building out a similar set of tools for different aspects of a project, but just doing it through different platforms and experimenting which tool works best for which portion of the process. So I love that framing. Thank you.
Richard, it looks like you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so just to build on that, talking about using multiple platforms, I basically use two. So I use uh, Copilot, which is kind of embedded in all of our Microsoft stuff, our SharePoint and Teams and all the stuff that we use day to day. Um, and I also use Google's Notebook LLM, which is um, helps me research and organize information extremely well. It gives me a lot of citations, but I my comfort level on that is quite low because I've come to realize, or maybe someone told me that that's a free service. It's not paid. It's
Mm.
Google. Be careful what you're putting in there was what I was getting, and I maybe you're going to come onto this, but it'd be interesting to know what kind of material is best avoided, and what are the red flags we should be thinking about when we're putting our clients' information or internal conversations potentially into that.
That's such a great question.
It's an awesome question. I am the biggest skeptic of the security of all of these platforms and whether or not they're sharing information either with themselves or outside. Um, my rule of thumb is always act like it's going to be um, discovered by somebody else. So what can you do to protect it? In general, that we're talking in general here. So if you redact specific information, obviously PII is off the table. But if you're redacting like the brand name and putting other things in there so that you can at least assess the information, the data, that's one way. Um, if you're on like Chat GPT or another LLM, that you can create a true uh, separated platform that has security built in and is already turned off for sharing with the LLMs. That's another. In the individual settings that you have with your accounts, go through them and make sure that you're turning all of those things off where you can. In ChatGPT, at least, you can have it to where it's learning from everything you do across everything you do in ChatGPT. Or like say you're creating a project, you can have it contained in just that project, so you know it's contained in there. Um, all of these things I think are critical um, with considering the governance of the data that we put into them. I think it's going to become even more critical how we govern that, is especially for agencies, is mission critical, because I think that's where we open the Pandora's box to issues that if they're not here yet, they will be soon. Where somebody puts something they shouldn't have out there, and it's discovered. Um, so to that point, I think it's a matter of understanding the tools that you do use, what security measures are in there, what can you do to protect yourself. Number one. Number two, looking at uh, what other options do you have? Do they offer a paid version that is protected? And it's just a matter of looking at what each offers, but also following just common sense guidelines in terms of you know what data can you still put in while still redacting some of it so it's not identifiable per se, and still getting some sense of assessment back from it.
Yeah, I think I would add to that. Assume that if you're not paying for it, that anything that you put into it is being used, regardless of whatever privacy settings that they claim. Um, if you're paying for it,
Not free.
the rule of thumb is if you're not paying for it, then you're the product, or in this case, your data is the product. So I think, Richard, when you're thinking about Notebook LM and Google, whether that's Gemini or any of their products, if you're not paying for it, I wouldn't put anything into it that is proprietary in any way, shape, or form. Once you're paying for it, they all have settings either by default, or I would always, as Mike said, encourage you to go and double check all of the settings to make sure that sharing the information back out to the LLM to learn from is turned off. That said, I believe all of these companies, the information is passing through their servers. It's being stored there for some period of time, even if it's not being shared back into the model where anybody else can access it, which means that technically somebody in their organization has the ability to see that information. In reality, with the literally trillions of requests that are happening every day with these, the likelihood that anybody at OpenAI or Anthropic or Google is looking is vanishingly small. But because it exists on their server for a period of time, should you be in a lawsuit, it's potentially possible for the government to subpoena that data, and get it. It depends on the organization and what they're going to do, but most of them are not going to jump in front of the train to protect your data from a legal search or subpoena. So I don't know if that completely answers the question, because frankly, I don't know that there is a complete answer to the question at this point in time.
Right. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned governance. I mean, I'm from the UK and I used to work in I'm in the US now. I'm old enough to remember when Britain was still part of the European Union and we were subject to very strict data
GDPR.
privacy laws that came out of the European Commission. This week I saw in the news, they've said basically we're going to start relaxing some of our regulation around AI because they are terrified, I think, of being left behind.
Right.
So I don't know if that's affecting anyone here, but
I think that's the case here as well. Right now, the government is not stepping in for the most part to put any significant guardrails around this, because I think they're considering it to be a kind of arms race like we saw during the Cold War. This time with China in particular, which is by far the most advanced besides the US in terms of developing AI capabilities. So I don't think you're going to see the government jump in and put a bunch of restrictions in place or guardrails or safety. Some of the states may do that, but I don't think you're going to see the federal government do that here.
Yeah, and I think even when you break it down even further in terms of governance of just maintaining data, if you build custom GPTs based on data, it's up to you to maintain how that data is updated and maintained so that the output you're getting from it is constantly getting better. That's another whole layer that you put on top of this that gets down to the local level and you and your team and how you govern your data. Less from a perhaps less from the security aspect and more from the just ongoing viability of that data. Um, it's a lot to think about, and I think there are so many layers to AI and the things that we get into that a lot of people skip a lot of steps or don't think about those steps.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something that has to be considered as we start getting into this whole new world of AI tools.
Right. Um, so I wanted to talk just a little bit about what's a good approach for firms. Particularly we're thinking about professional services, architecture, engineering, and other professional services. What's a good approach for adopting AI into your workflow in a way that's kind of thoughtful and effective?
Yeah, I think from that regard, I think there's a lot of um, doing some sort of workshop with your team to uncover use cases specific to each person's role
Hmm.
is where I usually start. Because again, if it's not relevant to what you do and how you do it, it's not going to work anyway. So I usually start with doing some sort of workshop where we're going through and identifying all the potential use cases based on pain points, based on repetition, based on things that are tangible for what that team is actually doing. When you go through all of that, we'll evaluate them then and prioritize them based on risk versus reward, if you will. And we're looking for the low risk, high reward things that are typically more mundane, the non sexy things that no one really wants to think about, that are very easy to implement, very quick wins to get buy in and show some sort of ROI so that it's doing that from a more of the leadership and buy-in, but also from getting people's feet wet in terms of understanding how to use these tools, and getting them more excited about wanting to do more of them. I think it's from that regard, then, Jared, to your point, it you take all of those use cases they identified, and you can map out your initial roadmap for the
Hmm.
things you want based on those things. That's the simplest way to do it that I've found the most success.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're buying things off the shelf, which I've seen people do that as well, they're going to be short lived. They'll take care of some of the things that you need to do, but it's not. You're kind of bypassing the opportunity to engage your team in getting involved in it in a very structured manner. Because the bigger thing I see coming out of AI, and if you're building your own tools, is that you have this collaboration, not only with the tool, but among your team that occurs because no one person is an expert in any of this. So it's a matter of people learning and sharing that knowledge that creates this whole new way of collaborating and excitement that's how you get the engagement and get people going on it.
Yeah.
The whole the art of the possible becomes just that when you have a team that's excited about it and embraces it. But to do that, it's got to be relevant again back to what they're doing on a daily basis.
Right. No, that's good. So, just to recap that, bringing the team together in some kind of workshop type approach, identify, and I think it's really important that you put everything out on the table. As crazy as it might sound, what are all the different kinds of things that you do that perhaps AI can help you with? and then prioritize them based on the return on the investment, capability, capacity, that sort of thing. Um, and I think that the other thing is, when you're thinking about your day-to-day interactions, and the work that you do, what something everyone can do is just start every project, every task, everything that you do, asking the question, how can AI help me with this? And often you won't know the answer, but what's really fascinating is you can just ask AI. So you can go into your favorite LLM and say, "Hey, this is the task that I'm working on. I have no idea if this is something that AI can help me with, but I want you to, ask me again. I love this. Ask me 3 questions, one at a time, so it doesn't fire hose you." And actually, there's a second point to that one at a time thing. So first of all, the ask me questions is a great way to pull information out of you. But if you just say ask me questions to clarify, it will give you 10 at a time, which first of all is annoying, but actually it's less valuable because when you ask them one at a time, it takes the additional context that you provide and it will revise the next question that it's going to ask you based on that. So it really is a kind of critical thing. But you can just say, "This is what I'm trying to do, and I don't know if AI can help me, but how do you think the AI can help with this?" And I think you'll be surprised how often it comes back with something that is useful, that you can
I think to that point, Jerry, I think the perspective is so important to us as creatives and agencies that having an unfiltered voice, if you will, that you can ask anything and you never know what you're going to get back if you
right.
do it that way versus giving it the role and whatnot. It's very interesting to do both just to sometimes get different perspectives that you hadn't thought of. And I
Yeah.
think that exact point is what I'm seeing more people learning once they engage and get their teams going. They start discovering things that they hadn't thought of before that truly can change their business model and in what they actually do.
Right.
Um, that's the cool part to all of this. That's the exciting part of all of this. You just have to have the right mindset to embrace it and get into it.
Yeah. So, I think, one of the things that I think there's a lot of fear, around AI, and particularly as we get jobs reports and CEOs are starting to actually flat out say, "We're not hiring because we're anticipating or already AI is, you know, uh, keeping us from needing to hire as many people." And so I think there's this often doom and gloom around AI and it's going to take my job, et cetera. What advice do you offer, just for maybe the mental state of all of
Right.
us, in terms of, are we even going to have a job in the future?
I think that those that think AI is going to take their job, I think it's the reality is it's people who know AI are going to take their job. That's how I look at it. It again, it's one of those things that because it's evolving and changing so quickly, it's up to each one of us to learn AI and how to navigate it for what we need as professionals.
Right.
So that onus is on each one of us. That's the biggest thing I think I see when I get into organizations. The employees are looking at leadership going, "Okay, tell us what to do." And it's like, no, we all need to do this. You
Hmm.
tell us what we need, so it's a complete mind shift in terms of how to look at it. Um, but are there things it can do that will replace jobs? Absolutely. But those are more the mundane things right now. Will it ever replace the human um, aspects? Maybe. I don't truly believe that. I think it can do some really good things right now, but I don't think it can replace humans. That's why I'm saying, if you look at it as another employee, it's a collaborator. It always needs some oversight, some human oversight, to give the context that only we bring to the table right now.
Right.
Again, because we bring so much from our memories, from our relationships, from all these other things that it doesn't have that context, again, to know all those things.
Right.
Over time, could it? Maybe. But I think for now, it's AI is not going to take your job. It's people who know AI will take your job. I think.
Yeah, I think to that point is if every industry thinks back, there was an inflection point probably in the last 20 years or so where computers and or the internet came into the picture. And I think about architecture engineering firms, the advent of tools like Revit that has changed how designers design, right? We aren't using the same kinds of tools that we used 20 or 30 years ago. And architects that didn't adapt to that, um, they're no longer practicing, or they're in roles that no longer require them to actually produce anything. Same thing with desktop publishing. When I started my career 30 years ago, we were just into the transition, and so there were companies that were still doing things the old way with paste up and cameras and what have you. But very very quickly that that had to change, and it did change. That I heard an interesting statistic when it comes to jobs. 60% of the jobs that exist today didn't exist prior to 1940. So this is, we're constantly kind of turning over the soil of what jobs are, what it means to do work, um, and literally creating new jobs. I mean, even, 20 years ago, the idea of having a job that was social media coordinator or YouTube influencer, I mean, these didn't exist. And people, there's YouTube influencers now making millions of dollars in a role that didn't exist probably even 10 years ago, the way it does today. So it's less about being worried about your job going away and more about what is the job of the future going to be that I'm going to have the opportunity to do.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think to that point, you can see what's going on out in the world right now. There are agencies popping up that are solely 100% AI, meaning um, I saw this a couple weeks ago, an agency that's creating commercials 100% with AI.
Mhm.
Typically, those commercials would have cost millions of dollars to produce and months to produce. They're knocking them out in weeks for $100,000 with a handful of guys doing it all using a
Right.
multitude of tools.
Right.
And they're phenomenal with what they can do.
Yeah.
So, is it a different way of doing what we do now? Absolutely. Is it, you know, are there limitations to it? Absolutely, there's limitations to it right now, but they're embracing it and doing it a different way and changed their whole business model and spun off. They're doing that locally here.
Yeah.
They're he's here doing that. So I think it's just to your point. I think it's embrace the fear from you should be fearful if you're not learning. Um, Embrace the fear, learn because once you learn, then you have a better step into where you're going in the future.
Yeah. And be in touch with your intuition. It's like learning to drive. If you're coming into a corner and you're going too fast, that pit in the center of your stomach that tells you you need to put on the brakes and slow down is something you need to pay attention to. The more comfortable you are, the more that you understand the car that you're driving, the faster you can go through that curve. So
Yep.
I think you have to pay attention to that, but you also have to get behind the wheel. To that point about using AI tools to create commercials. Last year, Coca-Cola did their big Christmas commercial using AI, and there was a lot of negative feedback about both the quality and what was happening with them doing that. Well, they're doing it again this year, and it looks like the quality of the work is dramatically better than it was last year. So that's just the
Yep.
evolution of the tools. And more importantly, I think the evolution of the people using the tools, they're getting better at it. But it's like anything else, it's like drones, right? Prior to the advent of cheap, inexpensive drones, if you wanted to have an aerial photo or video of a building to put on your website as part of a case study, you had to hire a helicopter or you had to get really lucky to get into another building and get that one vantage point you could get from the higher building. today, you can buy a drone that does credible footage for under $1,000 and learn to fly it in a couple of afternoons. And there's now firms that are using those tools very, very effectively to do. Yeah, I mean, did it replace the use of helicopters to do that? Absolutely. But has it created an explosion of really cool and interesting aerial photography and video? For sure. So there's always going to be losses. We don't have horses in the streets today the way that you used to. And if you go to Central Park and you see the carriage with the horse, it there is an element of romance to that. But I think if you went back to early 1900s New York and the streets are clogged with horses and you're trying to walk through what they're leaving behind, you would probably not be as excited about a world where horses were our only mode of transportation. And it's really interesting. I just saw a thing that showed that evolution. So Fifth Avenue in New York, and I don't remember the exact date, but it was something like 1900 or 1905. And yeah, it had to have been 1905, 1906 because the car was essentially invented, or what we know as the car, in 1904. And the street is clogged with horses and horse-drawn carriages, and there's maybe like one car in the middle of it. Literally 15 years after that photo was taken, the same street is entirely cars. There are no horses to be found. So this is not the first time that we have gone through a seismic shift in technology. It's just in this particular one, it feels quite a bit more personal.
Yeah. And to that point, I think the pace at which things are going to evolve and change and be introduced is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think the ability to, even in my experience, I've helped more clients in more diverse industries than I ever have in the past 6 months. I don't have to be a specialist in their industry to be able to help them with AI. I just have to help navigate them through the process and the tools,
Right.
to make what they already know better.
Yep.
So it from that regard, I think that was my biggest fear to getting into this was I don't have the skill sets or knowledge in some of these areas, but once you embrace it,
The principles
they
are the same.
principles are all the same. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
So I want to open it back up. We've got a few minutes left in the hour. I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask questions. So if you've got some questions or some thoughts that you want to share, please just jump in or raise your hand or put something in the chat. And if not, I got one final question to jump into. All right. Well, I'm going to give you my question while others are thinking if they have something that they want to add. So, with the pace of change in AI, beyond the LLMs and sort of the big names, are there any particular tools that you've been playing with that you're really excited about the potential and you think people should take a look at?
oh man, I think the video LLM or the video AIs are just getting ridiculously good.
Mhm.
What you can't see blurred out behind me is my video camera. And so that's more from a personal kind of fun thing that I do. But seeing how fast those are evolving, like View 3, there's a number of them that are just getting so much better. Um, I tend to focus in the core for the business aspects. When I
Mhm.
get into seeing tools that are more on the creative aspects, it's exciting to me. It's just I can't spend enough time there to dig into them.
Right.
It's just I think we're going to see more tools pop up to do things that are just going to be mind blowing.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So yeah, I don't have a ton, but for me, the VO3 and others that are coming out are so good at
Yeah.
what they're doing. You come light years from when 6 months ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, the pace of change is really interesting. I put a couple in the chat. VO3 that you mentioned, of course, Sora 2. I forgot to put in on the video side. On the audio side, definitely check out 11 Labs. Its ability to replicate your own voice and then take a script. So if you have folks that are not comfortable being on camera, being having their voice out there, you can clone their voice and with their permission, create a script and have have the AI essentially read that script in their voice. HeyGen is another tool that is allows you to create essentially an avatar of yourself, and those are becoming increasingly realistic. So if you combine those two things together, you can create a talking head video without ever actually recording yourself on camera. So there's a lot of interesting tools there as well. Anyone in the group that has tried something recently that you're really excited about? Uh, Cling and Runway. Yeah, Runway is another good one for taking a still image and turning it into video. Martin, what is Cling?
It's another video AI model.
Okay, awesome. Anyone
I
else
think
playing with anything fun?
I think when you think about a lot of these tools in the editing side, it's made editing so much better, not having to go back and retake something using 11 Labs for things like that, where you don't have to go back and retake something. You can use 11 Labs to change it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Richard, you talked about using Notebook LM, which I think is an amazing platform specifically for taking a lot of data, your own data, or documents, PDFs and things, putting it in. If you haven't played with the podcast creation tool that's built into it, it's utterly fascinating. You can take and give it multiple sources, including PDFs and websites, and then create a prompt for what you want a discussion to be about. And it will create what sounds like a very credible podcast with two different people having a conversation about that information. Super interesting to look at. And I would also point you to Q's AI. I'll put that in the chat as well. KUSE.ai, which is it's similar in some regards to Notebook LM. And if you don't have the ability to sign up for a paid account on Notebook LM, but you're looking to put data into something that you can pay for, you might want to check out Q's. It does many of the same things, but it also has a lot of interesting content creation, the ability to create decks and things like that from your content. So it's another good one to check out. All right, we are coming up on the top of the hour. I know folks have things to get to. Mike, thank you so much for being with us. If folks wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best way to reach you?
My email, and I can just put it here in the.
All right, and we'll include that in the recap that we send out to everyone. So if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to Mike or to myself. We're happy to engage on that. I think that takes us to the end. Unless anyone else has anything else that they want to ask, we will wrap this up.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank
Take
you all.
care.